All right, welcome to the Krueger Show after Giants baseball, the home opener. Man, there's nothing quite like the home opener, but today the home opener went to the Kansas City Royals. Hope everybody's having a great Friday afternoon. What's the old saying? The worst day at the ballpark is better than the best day at the office. And we're going to talk a little Giants baseball right here. Ned Colletti's going to join us, former Giants assistant general manager, former Dodger general manager. Ned is getting hooked up as we speak, and we'll get his thoughts on this one. But the Giants lose 3-1 to the Kansas City Royals on a kind of an overcast opening day in San Francisco. But still, the home opener is always a little special. There were a lot of empty seats. I noticed that. Somebody says we have two streams with two different people at the same time. Let me double check our stream schedule. But welcome to the Pig and a Pickle Krueger Show. Larry Krueger here. Pig and a Pickle is our sponsor. Check them out in Corte Madera and in Emeryville. They're open 7 days a week in Marin County, and they're open Wednesday through Sunday in Corte Madera. And thanks to all the good people at Pig and a Pickle for being proud sponsors of the Krueger Show. Well, and of course, get the brisket. The brisket chili is amazing. We have it says Damon Bruce coming up at 4:05, but what we really meant to put there is 5:05. And we're probably going to wind up blending these two live streams today because we've got Damon. We switch that as we speak right here from 4:05 to 5:05 for Damon. But Damon's, it's 4:25 right now, so we're probably, and Ned has yet to join us. So what we'll probably do is we'll talk to Ned here in this room at 4:05, and then we'll just reconvene in the room with Damon at 5 o'clock. There we go. We got Ned in the house right now. Hey, Ned, how are you? Good to see you.
Good, Larry. Good.
How is the travels? Safe travels back
Safe
from the Bay?
travels, a little bit delayed in SFO today, but it was a great opportunity to see some good friends.
I was thinking this game would end a little early at 5 o'clock. Damon Bruce. We're going to be joined by Damon, but we'll move over to a different room at 5 o'clock since we have that scheduled as well. Or I can just throw an invite in here. Well, actually, we'll do that. We'll move over at 5 o'clock. But 3-1 was the final today, and Giants went their 1 through 4 hitters went 0 for 11. They went 1 for 5 with runners in scoring position. Only 5 hits. They got the 1 run. Only the 1 extra base hit was the Jock Peterson triple in the 9th. Kind of a bad call on Yaz. I don't know if you saw it, but kind of a bad call by the home plate umpire. Corner pitch on Yaz in the 9th inning, and that's always frustrating because you get a lot of first-time umps, and I think the players just want it to be called consistently, and that looked to be off the plate. But they're human beings. They make mistakes. It's really interesting, though, I think so far, Ned, just kind of watching the Giants get going on this season. They are 3-4 out of the chute. In their 3 wins, the Giants have hit 15 home runs, okay? But in their 4 losses, they've combined for only 16 total hits.
Yes.
So it's kind of a feast or famine type of a deal. It's a club that has power up and down the lineup. I mean, they may have a dozen guys in this team that could hit double-digit home runs. But one thing that I'm kind of wondering about, one is, which is the real Giants? Is it the team that had just torched the Chi Sox pitching on the south side, or is it the team that's been totally shut down in 4 of the other games where they're hitting, in their losses this year, they're hitting 132 and they're averaging 4 hits a game? The thing, though, that it makes me wonder is when you think about the construction or the kind of the setup of Oracle Park, and you know it better than anybody, it's a big ballpark. It's hard to hit the ball out. I mean, there's certain days where it will jump out down the lines, but for the most part, it's one of the NL's more punitive hitters stadiums for power hitters. I'm just kind of wondering if you think there's a chance that the Giants may wind up struggling a little bit at home this year because they are such kind of an all or nothing kind of a club. They don't rally. It's a lot of power, and if you can't hit the ball out of the ballpark, um, I think you're going to have a hard time scoring runs. They don't have a lot of speed. They don't have a lot of high average guys. They do pile up a lot of strikeouts. So, what do you think, Ned? I mean, it seems like to me, if you just looking at them from afar, if they struggle to hit, they struggle to score when they don't hit it out of the ballpark, and they're going to struggle to hit it out of the ballpark in their ballpark. Is it possible they may really struggle to score at home?
Well, it is possible. The game has gotten away from the rally. I think we may have talked about that last show.
Yeah,
So you have to have the ability to put innings together, not just win games with the long ball. The kid today, Keller, just added a curveball to his repertoire this spring and got rave reviews. Might be in this case somebody they're really not that familiar with. And when you have an aggressive team, and this is an aggressive team. I mean, they swing it. They ain't looking for a walk. They ain't looking to run a count. They're looking to do some damage. Whenever you have a pitcher that will throw changeups or curveballs to teams like that, unless they're going to hang a curveball or unless they're going to throw a changeup that doesn't look like a changeup, they're going to get a lot of swing and miss. I think, or ground balls even. I think Keller had 9 ground ball outs today,
yeah.
pitched a little bit less than 6 innings, I think. So, you're talking about half of his outs, more than half of his outs came by hitting the ball into the ground. So if you the best teams put together rallies and can score in any which way. When you live and die by the long ball, I don't care what ballpark you're playing in, you're going to suffer with that. And now you add the ballpark that they're going to play half the games in, but that is a huge ballpark, as you say. Tough to get it out of there. You're going to have to probably adjust how you do it. It can't just be all or nothing all the time.
When you and Sabes were putting together the teams that played here in the early 2000s, I remember sitting there. I remember that first Yankee game before the park opened. It was an exhibition game. The Yankees came in, and I remember talking to you that day or the day before, and just talk, and maybe even Brian talking a little bit to Brian right there around the dugout, and just kind of asking him, hey, we don't know anything about this ballpark, right? We've never played any games here. It's going to take it's going to be a transition for sure. What is your game plan to win here, or what do you think your game plan needs to be? And he had a couple interesting points, and I think you did as well. That it was going to be the kind of ballpark where it was, the triples alley was going to be prominent. That was going to be something to account for. But the size of the outfield and the odd dimensions, I remember you guys both kind of agreeing at the time that maybe this ballpark was going to be the kind of park where you wanted to have almost 3 center fielders all in your outfield at
Yeah.
the same time. And you guys had Bonds, who's, in my opinion, the best defensive left fielder I've ever seen
Yes.
in throughout much of his career. And then some of those years, you had Calvin Murray, who was just, Calvin Murray struggled to hit, but man, he could absolutely go get it. I
Yep.
mean, he was a tremendous fielder. I remember him making a play against the Cubs in this ballpark early in
Yes.
the opening of the ballpark. He was either the first or second year. That was just it was like
Yeah.
one of the great
Remember
plays
that.
I think I've ever seen. Do
Yes.
you
Yeah.
remember that one?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So what do you think? I mean, now looking at it and seeing it's been, the park's been open since 2000. There's been a whole, this team's now won 3 championships in this ballpark. What would you say from looking at it from afar? If you were building a team to play in this yard, what would you be looking for? Do you still want 3 center fielders? It seems like the current regime is big on defense behind the plate, but maybe not as much as far as defense in the outfield. What do you think? How would you go about building a team here?
Well, I think you start with your pitching and your defense, and if you can get people who can play shortstop and they're playing 2 or 3 infield positions, and you can get center fielders in all your spots, kind of tough to do. But those are the best. Those are your best situations, and you've got to be able to cover ground, and you've got to be able to hold doubles as singles, triples to doubles, and you've got to really limit the amount of extra outs you give. Uh, that's imperative no matter where you play. But I'll go back to the offensive piece to it. And those teams, I mean, we had Barry. and then Jeff Kent
Burks.
became a different type of player. Jeff Kent was a 2080 guy at his utmost in other cities and came here and really galvanized that lineup. And in my opinion, became a Hall of Fame player. 8 or 9 years that were as good as any player in baseball, except for maybe Barry. And in 2000, better than Barry and Ellis Burks and Richie Aurelia. We had guys that could drive the ball. Okay, and they either drove it over. I think Richie hit it 35 home runs one year. Could either drive it out or drive it into the gap. And we had good defensive players that could cover ground. And we limited opposition rally. And Sabes used to always say, sometimes you're in the midst of an inning or a game versus the other team, and you've got to figure out a way to stop the game, so to speak. Stop their momentum. Stop it with great defense. Stop it with getting a strikeout. Stop it somehow, some way. And those teams were pretty good at that. I think over my last 8 or 9 years there, I think we had 15 games out of the race. Think about that. Teams that are eliminated at Labor Day this year will have more than we had in almost a decade. So, but it was a combination of a lot of things. And I think you have to use your ballpark to your advantage. And that is, you've got to be able to play good defense and cut off those gaps. Huge to do that. Whether you play a little deeper, kind of like in Colorado, which has probably more square footage seemingly than any outfield. And you've got to be able to do that and really cut it down. If you can't do that and you can't put together rallies, you are going to suffer there. Because the other team, if you can't play good defense, especially in the middle of the field or especially in your outfield, you will be giving up extra innings, extra outs in the innings, gappers, all sorts of things. And if you live and die by the home run, you are kind of limiting everything else you can do.
Ryan Hensley, our good friend, throws a super chat in there. He says, "What are the odds the Giants make the postseason?" Well, the Vegas over under, Ryan, is 81.5. So the Vegas thinks this is going to be a 500 team. But this is one of those things about baseball. It's not the NFL, and it's not the NBA, and it's not even really the NHL. There's a lot of surprise in baseball. Why? I think it has a lot to do with the variable performances that you get from all your players year to year. One guy might hit 320, and this year he may come back next year, and you think he's going to hit 300, he hits 220. But then you think he's done. He comes back the next year and he hits 295 with power. So, I mean, you do get those variable performances. What do you think, though, Ned? I mean, Dodgers, obviously, even though Dodgers have changed some of the players out, man, if you just go by the opening week of the year, they still have a very formidable offensive club. We know San Diego can swing it. Arizona's got a lot of speed, a lot of youth, and that probably favors them as the hotter months come on and guys get tired, guys get hurt. I kind of see the Giants as fourth place in this division, but what do you think? What odds would you give them to make the postseason? Or is it something that you need? How long would you need to look at a club before you can make a determination?
Well, a couple different things there. I mean, I think that Vegas has got it pretty close. It's going to be in and around 80, maybe 79 to 83, somewhere in that range, I think. Um, I don't know that they have the consistency to get to the high 80s or the 90s. I think you have two teams that are going to dominate the division, and I really don't know if San Diego is going to be able to catch up with the Dodgers. They've got all the pressure on them. Everybody's got the expectations out on San Diego. Everybody, well, the Dodgers, but Dodgers are pretty good, and they know how to play and they know how to win. And if they get, and I'll say one more thing about them, if they get to this, if they have a 90, 95 win season this year with the way that they are built for this particular season, they may put together another decade run of dominance. This is the one year that they may be a little bit fallible. But if they happen to figure it out, and they've figured it out for a decade already, they may put another run together as these young players start to gather some momentum and some experience. I think Arizona is improved. And I go back to what I always go back to. You got to be able to pitch. You got to be able to pitch, and you got to be able to pick it up. Nothing sexy about defense. Okay.
No.
But if you can't play it, you can't chase that scoreboard every day. It just doesn't work. So I think it remains to be seen how good Arizona's young players are. And the Giants got some young players too. that are maybe on the verge of getting to the big leagues. That is it, and so do the Dodgers. Those are tough situations to be in because the baseball season, we're going to go 6 months. You know how hard that is? Minor leagues play 5 months to begin with, and the competition is way below a major league talent level. So you've not only got the greatest gap between minor league and big league in any sport, and I've followed them all and I've worked in two of them. You've got the greatest gap from AAA, AA to the big leagues to cover. And then you have an extra month at the highest level. That what other sport has that? Where you get to the show, you're playing another 4 weeks to get to the next 4 weeks. That is a test for every young player. So young players that start out great, that's cool. Pay attention and watch and see how it goes because there's going to be a dip in there someplace. And that dip may be a small one for a week or two, or that dip may be the second half of a season. So outside of San Diego and LA, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how it all shakes out. Colorado, I guess probably the fifth place team. I think it's
Yeah.
between third and fourth with AZ and the Giants.
Tommy Huxley says, "Robo umps, please." I knew that was coming. What is your opinion on robo umps? There, it seems like it feels, Ned, like it's inevitable, and yet, God, I think that's such a huge, huge step to take for a sport that goes back to 1870. But I mean, and I don't, and the other thing about it is like, is it would we consider that an advancement even if we get all the calls right? It's a fundamental change in the game. You've been one of the, when you're a general manager, you're assistant general manager, these are the people that literally run the game of baseball and think about it all day every day from every different angle. I'm sure you've had some really compelling conversations with baseball people,
Yes.
whether it be scouts, GMs, announcers, players. Have you built up a consensus opinion? Do you have a real strong feeling one way or another on robo umps?
Well, I'm a traditionalist, but I'm digging the pitch clock.
You like the pitch clock
Yeah, I'm a traditionalist, but I started to like the ghost runner at second base.
in extras.
Yes. And
I would like it to start in the 12th and not the ninth, but I
yeah,
hear
I
you.
think that was the original idea because most games end in the 10th or the 11th. But I mean, it's all subject to change. It could go back to that in another year or two as they go. I don't think anything is obviously nothing is carved in stone, including those things that have been carved in stone for 150 years.
Sure.
So, I think that all may be adaptable at some point in time. I think the robo umps I was against it because I think even though it cost me numerous games and my teams may have won numerous games because of a call like you talk about, he has as the last pitch to him, because of that, the humanness of it. But I gotta tell you, the last couple of years, this may sound crazy, but I've gotten into tennis. Okay. Now the
Yeah,
reason
you just went out to Indian Wells last
I
week,
was
right?
in Indian Wells a couple of weeks ago. I went to Wimbledon last summer. I was used to really have an interest in it. Then the baseball gig, took over almost my entire life.
Tennis uses that Hawkeye
Yes,
replay, right?
and I got to tell you, it's quick and it's accurate, and it's impressive. So if that's how it's going to go, you know what? I guess I'm okay with it. I mean, tennis wasn't my sport, but I remember when you had line judges and people yelling in or out and Connors and McEnroe, squawking about, half the calls and all
You
kinds.
can't be serious.
And I guess I miss that a little bit, miss the character of the players like that. But I find that I'm okay with it, and they show it on the board, so you see it almost immediately. I mean, it takes no time, and they have somebody calling in and out, but it's all automatic. They don't actually have a person sitting there calling in or out, but the way Hawkeye is set up, it calls it automatically, and so you have no stoppage of play. The players know immediately where it is. So I almost like that better than having challenges for balls and strikes, because I think that's going to continue to slow the game down. They sped it up a lot. That's great. But now you're gonna, if you get, saw this theory. You're gonna get 3 challenges a game on a ball or strike call. Well, how long is that going to take? And if you're doing the same system to decide that, I guess why don't you just make it like that and have the umpire have something in their ear, ball and strike? How the umpires stay focused when they're behind the plate and they got you know something in their ear saying, yes or no, ball or strike. I think that will take some getting used to for everybody. But I'm not as much against it as I once was. And I guess, you take the human element out though, and that's always been a big part of the game. The human element has been part of the lifeblood of baseball, and you'll be taking out one of those.
I just think of I always take it back to my when I was a kid, and I think about all the different things that I used to really be mesmerized by. I mean, things that we don't have in the game anymore. For example, the beer vendor who would come down and crack 6 Budweisers or 6 Millers, and literally you could hear it boop, 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 boop. And then he's
Yep.
literally got 3 cups in one hand and he's pouring all 3. And then he's handing them. Those guys were sweating and they were handing cash back and forth. I miss those guys. One,
Yes.
I miss Lasorda and those guys just getting run. And
Yep.
here it
Oh yeah.
comes. Here it comes.
It
Here,
never
Dave
over.
Bristol one time was out there. He was arguing and he takes off his jacket and he takes off his shirt and he runs back. He throws all the bats out. Okay, yeah, I mean, but it was fun to watch. It was like
Yes.
something. And I'll tell you the other one. And this is one that I really miss, and you guys had a lot to do with this being changed. I miss the guys on second, and there's a single up the middle, and the outfielder's coming, and the third base coach is sending him home, and the entire place is like the collective
Yep.
because there's gonna be a play at the plate, and
Yep.
there's no rules, no nothing. And the Dodgers had Sosha, and the Giants had Jack Clark or Chili Davis. Jack
Yes.
Clark was 6'3", 230. Sosha was, carried most of his weight from his waist down. He would throw those knees down and block off that plate. Here came the dude, and everybody. And then the Buster Posey thing happened, and with Scott Cousins, and that play's gone. The beer vendors are gone. The arguing umpires are gone. The arguing managers are gone. This was entertainment, and it was
It's
a
huge.
big part of the game. And I just think that I know we want to improve the game, but it's like we're improving several entertaining elements of the game right out of the game, and it's not quite the same.
Agreed. And the play at second base, the runner taking out the
Play
shortstop.
at second base. Here comes Hal McRae in the
Yeah.
70s. Oh my
Once in a
God, Hal
while, like
McRae.
on Instagram, an old baseball gram will show those plays. I was like, ay, ay, ay. It was so cool. Buddy Harrelson and Pete Rose. I mean, Hal McRae, was really fierce. I mean, that stuff is gone. I want to go back we'll get back to this, but I want to go back to the last discussion about the robotic umps.
Yeah.
And because I wonder, I'm a huge fan of Greg Maddux. I was there when we drafted him in Chicago. I was the only guy to ever trade for him. I traded for him twice. So much respect for him.
Genius player. I did an interview with him
Yes,
one time, and I was just like, I was
as
floored by the way he talked about the game and how
no
smart he
doubt,
was, and
no doubt.
unbelievable.
Photographic memory. But, he got a lot of calls that were borderline
Right?
because, I mean, he was like Barry. Barry got a lot of calls that were borderline
Buster got a
because,
lot of framing calls.
yes, because of their status in the game, how talented they were, how precise they were. And so is Greg Maddux with a robotic ump? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe he is, but maybe he doesn't have the longevity that he enjoyed. I don't have an answer to it. It's just a theory, but it changes the game. It changes how that part of the game will be. You can go back to the Miami LCS, I think, with Eric Gregg behind the plate, right? and the plate was like, an extra foot outside and inside. Um,
It was like a gigantic pizza box or
yeah,
something. It
you
was so
never have
huge.
that anymore. That would be out. So, you know, we've and maybe it helps bring offense back, I guess, as I'm trying to think it through with you, because pitchers will not be getting an extra half baseball width on the outer half or the inner half. Not gonna be getting that. Okay. And now you got the pitch clock. You don't, if you're throwing 100 miles an hour, you don't have time to take a breath, gather yourself, and go. You're getting the ball and you're going right back at it. So
Right.
maybe it's going to, challenge pitchers to be a little different. But I think it takes away some of the challenge of the strike zone. And I would always watch a game and early in the game determine subliminally almost what kind of chance our starting pitcher was going to have or their starting pitcher was going to have by where the strike zone was in the first inning. Yeah, and sometimes it moves around, sometimes umpires are not consistent. But by and large, it is what it is for that particular day. And I think that is also part of the part of the allure of the sport. If you're a pitcher and you're not getting that outside corner, you got to change your approach. Hitters know, he ain't getting the outside corner today. I can, he's going to be laying some stuff in there. And so some of that is gone. I think one of the greatest things I ever see in any sport is adjustment on the fly. Who can adjust in the midst of an at bat, in the midst of a hockey shift, in the midst of a NBA fast break, in the midst of a football game? Who can adjust on the fly? Everybody's got game plans. Like, Mike Tyson says, everybody's got a game plan until they get, punched in the nose. But when
Right.
the game starts to change in the midst of it, to see who could adjust. Tony Gwynn, marvelous hitter, adjusted almost pitch to pitch. So you take away not knowing if you're going to have the outer half or you're not, a little bit outside. You're going to, you got a robotic umpire. You're not getting it. It's not there. So it kind of makes it a little bit more fundamental without a whole lot of humanness to it, because it's not just a humanness of a human calling a ball or a strike. It's knowing that that strike zone is not moving.
Well, it's just
It's
like the NBA. It's like, Steph Curry gets calls. Steph Curry, if you had a robot, would get no more calls than, the 12th guy on the roster.
yeah,
And in basketball, it seems glaring in some ways. One of the other things I thought was really interesting in the game today, I want to get your thoughts on it, and that is the way the Royals position their outfielders. Now I don't know if you were flying, and I don't know if how much of this you could see, but basically against Lamont Wade, a left-handed hitter, they moved their right fielder into right behind second, right between first and second, played him like an infielder on the outfield grass, and then moved their outfielders, their center fielder and their left fielder into the gaps and
mhm,
gave away the line and gave away center field in the air. I mean, I thought
yeah,
that was interesting. I mean, what to me the most underrated aspect of winning baseball that we never talk about really, and there's now there's stats for it, but even I was talking to Wotus the other day. He's like a lot of the defensive stats are so flawed on a lot of ways, and he's a guy who, his whole life
right.
has been about positioning and defense. But what do you think? What do you think of that? Where in this ballpark, you got a left-handed hitter, you can't do the two guys on the side of the right, and the shortstop's got to stay left of the
Yeah,
second base bag. We'll just move the right fielder in, give ourselves another body there, and we'll make our two outfielders cover a ton of real estate. What do you think of it?
I think it's smart. I think it's finding a way around the lack of a shift on the infield. Um, I think it's up to the hitters as it was when people were sending their third baseman in the short right field the last 4 or 5 years. Hitters need to adjust to it. He starts hitting the ball down the line. You know, People will be adjusting to that too. The reason that there are defensive alignments that catch our attention is because the propensity of the hitter to do the same thing over and over again within reason exists. And, if you can go the other way and you can do some other things, they're going to have to play you straight up, and that opens up other gaps for you if you're a great hitter. But, I think it's wise to do it. I think it's a way around the infield shift. Kind of maybe serves a certain purpose with giving them a little bit more liability. Ball gets through the infield is one thing. Ball gets past the outfield at the line with a guy who can run. Totally different story. But I think it's wise if they think that's the reports they've got, that it's over and over again. This is where he goes and this is what he does. It's up to him or any other hitter that gets played like that. Hey, I'm going to start to adjust with that. How many times, Larry, when we had the third baseman playing in the short right field with a left-handed hitter up, how many times in all the games we've seen the last 5 years did we see anybody bunt the ball down a third baseline?
3, 4.
Hardly
I saw
anybody.
Brandon Belt do it a couple times.
Yeah,
Hardly
they had,
ever.
you
Even
got
on
90
was
feet
and
between.
the guy, and if you ask a guy about it afterwards, he's like, "Hey man, they're paying me 12 million bucks a year to hit the ball over the fence. I'm not laying down a bunt." And a lot of, but I do understand, but it is amazing that 90 feet in the postseason is like 90 feet. Oh
Yeah,
my God, you gave up 90 feet. There's been stories written in papers all across the country about
yes,
90 freaking feet. But in regular season, it's like, I don't care about that 90 feet. I'm getting on my back
yeah,
heel and I'm swinging for the downs. Yeah,
yeah.
it's a culture. It's a mindset. It is one of the other things I got to get your thoughts on. Kapler talked before the game about how the Giants had a fully rested bullpen coming into this game, and one of the things that he attributed to it is the fact that the Giants are keeping Sean Manaea, Jacob Junis, basically starting pitchers in their bullpen, and they're
Yeah.
comboing some of these games so that they don't abuse their bullpen. When you see the roster construction you were a roster constructor. Your job was to construct the roster. This is your area. Did you ever think about, you and Brian ever talk about, hey, why don't we load up on starting pitchers and that will save our pen, instead of having, the Tim Worrells of the world with 82 appearances or something. We'll limit their appearances and we'll go to more multiple inning relief outings from a seventh starter, an eighth starter, a ninth starter. The Giants aren't the only ones doing that. LA's done it a lot. And if you look at LA and the Giants, I think over the last few years, both teams have a pretty good record when they do go like bullpen games. That's a different topic with an
Yeah.
opener. But what do you think of Kapler and Bailey going with Junis and Manaea out of the pen and kind of combo starting the back end of their rotation to try to save their bullpen?
I think when you look at the particular player, and I've watched one of those guys pitch quite a bit, and it's a once through the order type of pitcher, and so when you're going to take the ones through the order of effectiveness, 1 to 3, 5 to 8, 4 to 7. When are you going to do it? And so I think it makes sense in a lot of different categories. I think it is hard though. I think you are always going to be. You've got to cover so many innings during the course of a season, no doubt. Okay, you got 162 games. You're going to have to cover 8 to 9 innings every day, sometimes more than that. So your average is probably going to be 9+ innings a day you have to cover no matter what. So if you do that, are you going to, you may save your bullpen. A few guys may have 10 less innings, 6 or 7 less appearances, be a little bit fresher as you get to the second half, as you get to October. But do you have enough starting pitching to do that? You've got to cover those innings, however you're going to do it. And I think that one way or another, one part of it is going to have some wear and tear to it, including just your construction of where am I going to find 7 starting pitchers? I mean, legit starting pitchers that can give you, because really what they are, they're long men, what we used to call long men who could
Right.
sub. So that's really not different if it's your fifth, sixth, seventh starter. They're really what we would call, he's a long guy, and he can also start for us. So it's an interesting dynamic to kind of take apart and think about. but you still got to cover those innings one way or another. And if you're used to starting, the downside to it is if you are used to being a starting pitcher where you're going to have 4 days off, sometimes 5 days off, and you go out there and you give your team 2 to 3 to 4 innings, when are you coming back?
Yeah,
3
I
days,
mean there's a lot of
4 days?
unknown there. Yeah.
I mean, you're at some point in time, guys. Again, are they a long man? Because the long guy, he would almost always need the next day off. So
Did you
it's
let your starting pitchers golf when you and Sabes
uh,
if you're getting ready, you're going to LA, you're going to San Diego, you're going to Colorado. You got a 9-game road trip. You show up at the airport and there's 7 different pitchers with their clubs. Did Sabes go,
I
son
don't
of
think
a
we allowed. I think believe it or not, I think we allowed the broadcasters to bring clubs, but we didn't allow players to bring clubs.
Okay.
I can't remember. I mean, we may have a year or so here and there. I mean, Atlanta was famous for it with their great rotation. But you're talking about 3 guys that are in the Hall of Fame, so that they ended up, golfing on the days they weren't pitching. Apparently, it wasn't that big a deal for those guys with those talent and that mindset. But I don't.
Supposedly, Bobby Cox, you told him to do it. Said
Yeah,
like he
probably.
saw. I think he was. They saw Maddox or something the first year he signed there as a free agent, and it was before a game, and they're like, what are you doing here? Go out, get out there and go play golf. It's like what? Can I
Yeah.
tell you my Atlanta Brave golfing story? So I'm playing Merced Golf Club with a buddy of mine. Right? Have I told you this story?
No.
Okay, I'm playing Merced. I'm playing Merced, which is a private club in the city. Really nice club. It's not San Francisco, but I think it's better than Olympic. Anyway, my buddy's dad is a member at Merced. So he's like, "You want to play Merced?" And I'm like, "I suck, but I'll play. What the hell?" He's like, "We can get on because it's a super foggy morning and it's really early and I know the starter and my dad's going to let us." And I'm like, "All right, I'll play with you." So we get out there and we play. And there's a group, there's a foursome in front of us on a par 3 and we've had, it's morning, but we're golfing and we're in college. So we're, even though it's morning, we're still having a couple beers, right? My buddy may have had a couple more than a couple, right? So he's kind of lubed up and, we're on the back 9 and, and all of a sudden he starts to tee off and I'm like, Jay, they're still up on the green right there. It's a par 3. I go, they're still up on the green. And he's like, they waved us up. I go, Jay, they didn't wave us up. I didn't see them wave us up. And he's like, they waved us up. And I don't care. I'm going to hit. I go, you sure you're going to hit right into him? You know that, right? He's like, I don't know, man. He takes a shot. And I'm like, you probably won't hit it clean anyway. He hits it perfect, right? Hits the fringe, takes a bounce, and it hits the guy in the calf, right? Now I see the guys and they're pissed and they're waving their clubs and one guy's running to the golf cart and they're pointing and they're pissed. And I'm like, Jay, what are you doing, dude? Now they're pissed. So he's like, don't worry, my dad's a member here. I'm like, oh, great. Here we go. This is going to be. And so we get in our golf cart. We get up to the green. And he's like, we'll just hang back. You can hit, you can wait. We'll hang back. We'll let them, get ahead of us. And I go, Jay, I don't think they're going to get ahead of us. You just hit them and they're pissed. So sure enough, they're not going anywhere. They're just standing there and they've all got their hands on their hips. And we get up as we're getting closer. I realize the only guy that I recognized was Don Sutton. Because Don Sutton had a curly, bright, white, like perm.
Yeah.
And really, really, really tan. Right? So really tan guy with a huge white perm. And he's got sunglasses on. He's swearing. And I look up. It's Maddox, Avery, Smoltz, and Sutton. And I guess he had hit Avery in the calf. And these guys are swearing at us. They're swearing. Don Sutton's like swinging a club. He's like, you idiots, you goddamn, and I'm like, it's him. It was him. It wasn't me. It was him. And Jay goes, you know these guys? I'm like, that's Don Sutton. That's Greg Maddox. That's John Smoltz. That's Steve Avery. Do you watch baseball? And he's, you guys. Yeah. He's like, do you guys know what you're doing? Yeah. Anyway. We talked to them. We obviously apologized a bunch. They weren't hurt or anything, so it wasn't like they were that
Yeah,
pissed, but they
yeah,
were pissed that we
yeah.
breached the etiquette.
Etiquette.
Then my buddy's like, "Can I get an autograph?" I'm like, "Dude, let's just let him go. Let's just let him go." But that was a hilarious moment because it was a foggy day at Merced, and these
Yeah.
guys were having a good old time playing golf. And sure enough, we hit up on them, and it's against the etiquette, Ned. It's against the
I
now.
understand.
Are you a golfer yourself? Because I mean, you've had opportunities, I'm sure,
No,
to
I
play.
haven't golfed for a long time, but, I got a dear friend in LA that belongs to a great course, a historic course, and I would go in there and have lunch with him every so often and got to know everybody there, and, I've gone in there and spoken to groups, during postseasons, watching games with 30 or 40 people and, offering an insight to it. And they gifted me with a membership this past January
Where at?
at Lakeside Golf Course and right by Warner Brothers. Started by Bing Crosby and Bob Hope years ago. I mean, Sinatra was a member, Bob Hope obviously, and Bing, and it's about 100 years old. The course. So I haven't played yet. I've been in there for a meal once in a while, which I'm prone to do, but it's one of my goals to start playing a little bit. Hey, candidly, I haven't had time to do anything for
Oh, I know.
years.
You've
So
been wed to your career. I mean, it's just,
I'm
and
trying.
you're down in Southern Cal. I mean, Bel Air,
Oh
amazing
yeah,
course. I actually went down once to the Nissan at Riviera. Have you ever walked on Riviera Country
no,
Club's grounds?
no.
It's
I
awesome.
gotta show you. I gotta show you something here. See these golf clubs right there? Let me
Those
see.
Vins.
Those are Vin Scully's golf clubs here. Now they're left-handed and I'm right-handed, and so when I told him that I had bid for him and got him to keep him in the so-called family of the Dodgers and all that, he said, "Well, I hope they don't ruin your game." I said, "Well, I have no game to ruin, A, and
and,
I
and I'm
have
not
to start
lefty.
shooting from the other side, But I know I intend to do it at some point in time. Everybody I know does it. I'm like
Oh,
I'm like there's 2 guys I know that don't do it, Sabes and me.
I
Everybody
was gonna
else I
say
know does it,
I can't even picture you guys at a golf course.
No,
I
I've
mean,
never
it's even
golfed
hard
with
to
Sabes.
it's hard to picture. Bomber
I've
T
taken
says
his
all of
kids ice
Larry
skating, I've done all kinds of stuff, but I've never
Bomber
I've
says all
never
of Larry's stories are awesome. All in says, why does Larry have hard to believe stories? Yeah, I've lived a little, as Gary would say. Big day today. The guy who threw out the first pitch, Mike Murphy, has been the Giants clubhouse guy since '58, and I believe it was Eddie Logan who was the guy who
came
was
from the Polo
long
Grounds.
time. He was the Polo
Yeah,
Grounds guy, and then Murph in '58 started with he was a Bay Area guy, and. I've run into Murph. Obviously, I've talked to Murph many times at the yard. I was somewhere on the peninsula, and I was at some house, and I came out of a house, and we were like right next door to Murph, and Murph was walking his dog, and he's like, "Hey, Larry, how you doing?" I'm like, "Murph." So I ran into him one time on the street. I forget where it was, like South City or Saramonte, or he lived right there on the peninsula somewhere. Probably still does. You got any Murph stories? I mean, you got
oh,
this. I mean, and what do you? This guy devoted his life, Ned, to being a clubhouse guy, and I mean, some people would say it's a thankless job. It's not always sexy, but he just in some he was such a fixture there. He was more of a fixture than anybody in the history of
of
the
the
franchise
franchise.
in San Francisco. And more of a
Amen.
more of a fixture than any owner, any player, any GM, any exec, anybody. I
I
mean,
could go
give
on
me
and
give
on
me something
about
on Murph.
I could go on and on. He is one of the kindest, nicest, most dedicated people I've ever met in my entire life, and, um, I don't even know where to begin on these stories. He went to the great Scottsdale restaurant during spring training, Don and Charlie's, which I'm sure you've been to. It's closed a couple of years ago.
Right.
He had his own booth, and he was there
That's awesome.
every night of the spring, every night, not not once a week, twice a week, 3 days a week, 7 days a week, beginning of end of camp. When I first realized how kind he was really my first week as a Giant employee. flew out to San Francisco and worked for the Cubs, my hometown team, for 13 years. Um, Anything with a Cub logo on it was almost impossible to be given to you. It was a very, very tight ship. And I'm getting ready to fly back to Chicago. And he comes up to my office and he's got bags full of Giants gear, t-shirts, hats. And he says, take this back with you. And my family picks me up at the airport and they go, what's all this? We never got any of this stuff with the Cubs. And you've been there a week. And Murph says, send it, bring it home, start changing your family over from that Cub blue to the black and orange of the Giants. You're part of this family now. And I talked to him about 3 weeks ago. We talked for probably 45 minutes to an hour and just laughed about the different things we saw and did. Just a priceless, priceless person that, I was in San Fran, as you know, last night. I took a bunch of
Yeah.
Giant people
How
out to
was
dinner.
that?
It was phenomenal. And
Where'd you guys go?
I needed to see my buddies and the people I worked with, and some have gone on to do other things. There were like 10 of us last night at my North Beach favorite spot, Sodini's, where I used to do some of your shows from.
Yeah, yeah.
And but I had like about a 3-hour segment in the afternoon. Had lunch down there with Randy DeMartini from the Boys and Girls Club. Does phenomenal work.
I didn't know that. See, now Randy and I go back like
Really?
yeah, I know Randy. My dad used to run the Salesian Boys Club.
No
My
way.
dad, yes, with Fusco and Russ Gumina
Yeah,
and Gumina, I guess you call
yeah,
it,
yeah,
but like Fred Scolari, the late Fred who played for the Washington. He was he
yes,
was a pro basketball player. When I was a
yes,
little boy, I used to play at the Salesian Boys Club because my dad used to send me there. That was like daycare in the summer, right? He would drop
yeah.
me off there, and Fred Scolari, who was an older guy who ran the club at the time, he used to tell me these stories about, oh, your dad ran the club and helped us so much. And my dad went to USF on a scholarship that was produced, but because my dad's dad, Ned, was a Muni bus driver. He was a Muni cable car operator. He wasn't a man of means, but my dad was a good student, and I think they came up with like a scholarship to help him pay for St. Ignatius, USF, and USF Law School.
Oh,
And so my dad gave back to the club by running the club somewhere between when Angelo Fusco, I don't know if you know Fusco, but Fusco ran the club. He
yeah.
died, and before Scolari took over. But he was an incredible dribbling guard, and he used to
Oh,
say to me, I'll give you $5 if you can take the ball from me. And so he would just sit there and dribble it around, and I would try to get it from him, and you couldn't get it from him, and that's how good his handle was. He was just all over the place,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And then Russ and Randy DeMartini, I call Randy the mayor of North Beach. I
no
mean,
doubt.
you go into like Brad Dugan's place there, Joe's of North
Yep.
Beach. Randy's got his own booth, his own table.
Oh,
It's like
yeah.
he's like a made man. I mean, it's like Toots Shores and he's DiMaggio or something, you know. So Randy and I go way way back.
Oh, gosh.
I consider Randy like family, man.
I
That's
never did
amazing.
that.
All the years I've known you, all the years I've known Randy, I never knew that you knew Randy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've known him for a long,
Great
long
guy. What a
time.
great guy.
And I needed to do that. I haven't had a chance to be up in the Bay Area except for San Jose, which is at the bottom of the Bay Area, with the hockey gig. But I needed to do it. I needed to see my buddy. So I had lunch with Randy, and then I had
Right.
about 3 hours before I hosted this dinner with, current and former Giant employees. I mean, I love these people. It was just magic to me to work there. And I stayed across the street from the ballpark, and I had all this time to kill. So I walked around the park yesterday, and I had tears in my eyes just thinking about the great memories I had there. I found a little cement slab that's got, our names in it and things like that they put in 2000. I looked, all over the place, and it was like looking for, a needle in a haystack. There's 1,000 of them there. I was over 950 before I found one that I put in there. But it's just wonderful. And I stopped by this morning, and I thought Murph was throwing out the first pitch, and I almost stayed today just to see him throw out the first pitch. and my flight was delayed, so I probably could have stayed to see my buddy throw out the first pitch. But he's an institution there. And all my friends in San Francisco are some of my dearest friends in all my life. One more quick Murph story.
Yeah.
So, my family's from Chicago. I'm from Chicago, and they stayed in Chicago during most of my Giant career, except they would come out when my son played baseball for a long time and scouted for the Giants. In fact,
How's he
drafted the
doing right?
Giants.
How's Lou doing right now?
Doing good, thank you. He stopped scouting. He wasn't analytical enough, so he moved on to a career in clinical psychology, and now he's a
Nice.
counselor, and he counsels athletes and family people, and tries
Good
to
for
help
him.
people out every day. Yeah, wonderful, wonderful guy. But his first boss was Mike Murphy, working in the clubhouse, cleaning up the clubhouse. His mom used to say, "You can't clean up your room when you're cleaning up the clubhouse." You know, but
Why don't you just bring some of that effort home?
that
You know?
was my son's first gig. He said that, Murph would have a cigar and be listening to Sinatra, and everybody be in there vacuuming and washing clothes and putting all the unis back. And, Murph set the unis up. I can't remember which way it went, but if they get beat, I think their name comes out, their name faces, like Krueger would be facing the middle of the room, the name Krueger. If they win, I think the Giants name faces the middle of the room, something that Eddie Logan had taught Murph, you know, years and years and years ago. So just great memories. Murph, gosh, just one of the best. I've seen Murph play Santa Claus, believe it or not. For the Sabian boys, he would come over and play Santa Claus, and it was hysterical.
Did
What
you and Brian ever talk? I mean, ever confide in him as far as like or give us tell us what you think because
Oh yeah,
he's there in the room. The one thing about Murph is that Murph could tell a phony. Murph was
no
great at telling
doubt,
a phony, and if you were
no
a
doubt,
phony, if you were some two-faced guy, he could read that in a second.
no doubt.
Do you guys ever utilize him and
Oh
kind
yeah,
of pick his
well,
brain on guys?
not ever to put him in a position of jeopardy, because he's in there with the players. He works with
Sure.
the players, for the players, but he would know. And if we were having a conversation, he happened to stop in the office, and we were talking about somebody, he'd either go, "Oh yeah, this guy's going to help us," or, "Oh, I don't know about this guy." I think when you sit in that seat, it's up to you to get as much information as you can, whether it's somebody you see, a game you watch, an analytical report you read, wherever the information is coming from, just so it's a trusted source. Many times, especially in LA, our visiting clubhouse man there for a long time knew everybody, had been there for years, Jerry Turner. And to think about a team coming in and you having somebody who could tell you about the clubhouse, tell you about this guy. Do the coaching staff like him? Is he a worker? Is he a clown? How does he feel after they get beat? I think that anybody who doesn't talk to the clubhouse people is missing a tremendous source of information. Once you know how they think, like I used to say too, I had to scout everybody, not just players, not
You got to
just players,
filter everybody. Yep.
everybody. You got to know how they evaluate, how they think, how they go about what they do, so that when you ask them a question or they just impromptu offer you some advice, you know where it's coming from. You know what the basis of their belief is to tell you. But yeah, Murph was one of my all-time favorite people. I have a baseball right over there signed by Murph.
Great
I got
guy.
Wins
Great guy.
golf clubs here, and I got a baseball right there signed by Murph. And when I said, "Murph, I need you to sign a base," he says, "I'm just a clubhouse guy. What do you got
Yeah.
there?" Murph,
Oh
I
no.
said,
Humble.
you are the Giants, my friend. You are the Giants.
Yeah.
One
Nuts.
one more thing, and this is not a Murph story necessarily. His office every
Willie
day.
Mays would be in there.
Yes, Willie Mays, Willie McCovey, whoever was around. And I used to sit in Murph and say, "Hey, Willie wants to see," and I would think, Willie Mays wants to see me. How did my life end up so beautiful that a guy like Willie Mays would be asking to see me? But that office was was priceless, and
Yeah.
nobody like Murph. There's only going to be one.
Oh, I know. I know. It's a passing of a torch. It's the end of an era. I can't say enough good things about Murph, and you can see the players stomach some guys and they love other guys and
Yeah,
they love Murph.
yeah,
Two last ones before we let you go. And this, I mean, if I'm putting you on the spot here, please just say you're putting me on the
yeah.
spot.
Oh well.
But I get this question a lot, and people ask me, and maybe it's not necessarily in this uh, in this chat, but people ask, where is Ned as far as his life and what he's done? Because you've had a lot of success, man. You've been a assistant GM. You've been a GM of a biggest franchise, as big a franchise as there is in the game. I won't say biggest. I want to anger too many Giants fans, but you know what I'm saying. And now you're teaching, and you got a lot of things that you enjoy, and you got you got grandkids, and you got things that are more important maybe than winning games or whatever. But where are you if somehow the phone rang and it's Larry Bear and he says, Ned, we want you to come back for 3 years and set this thing straight? Are you in a spot where you're just like, you know what? No. Or would you sit there and go, okay, well, if this were right and this were right and this were right, okay. I mean, where are you at as far as, because I know you had that thing last year where you put it out on Twitter that you had had this great career in baseball, and you kind of, and it was an incredible tweet. I thought it was beautiful, and it got so much traction.
Had 1,000,007 people see it.
Yeah, I mean, and then
Crazy.
also the book I feel like is your life project, and I almost felt like you were closing that chapter, but then you're so obviously so engaged, so up to speed. If an opportunity, these jobs are very rare and they're very special. If you had another opportunity, is that something that you would be interested in, not interested in, out of hand, or would it have to be like certain conditions? Where's your head right now on that kind of thing?
Well, I don't think it's that black and white, so to speak. I think it depends. It depends on where it is, who it's for, the situation. I had opportunities 3, 4, 5 years ago, 3, 4, and 5 and 6 years ago, but I didn't believe in the organizations, and I don't need that. I don't need an organization that is, you know,
Spinning their wheels.
so trying to be 81 and 81. The Giants may be 81 and 81, but they're not trying to be 81 and 81.
Right,
They're
right.
trying they're trying to win every year. If it's that type of situation, yeah, I would consider it differently. Um, I have the yearning to be back with a club in some capacity, mentorship, just discussing. I hired Bill LaJoy, who was a great general manager when I
Detroit,
got to the
right?
Dodgers. Yes, Detroit Tiger World Series champion. And I knew of Bill. I had never worked with Bill, but I needed Bill's experience, and I loved working with him. People who don't want to hire somebody because they're afraid they're going to take their job, or they're afraid they're going to expose their inadequacy. To me, those are fools. Those are fools, because it will catch up at some point in time. But to try and stay on point here with your question, yeah, in the right situation, absolutely. If the Giants wanted me to be an ambassador, or be around once in a while, or come up and not have anything to do with the baseball department, just with the franchise, I do it in a heartbeat. It was proven to me again yesterday. I left 17 years ago. Okay. You and I still talk. I've been gone 17 years. The people I had dinner with, some still work there, some don't work there. Okay. 17 years, I went to the hated rival. But the kinship and the soulfulness of it all, isn't lost on me. And I walked around the ballpark yesterday, I had tears in my eyes, just thinking about being there and everything that I learned there. I learned a lot about myself there. I was there without my family, so I had all this time to really dig into the game, and that's where I met Sabes, and that's where we put together some pretty good teams and changed the culture of a franchise in a city. And a lot of people got that ballpark built, but having a good baseball team didn't hurt.
Oh no, no, beyond
So
no. I'm not.
all
I'm
that
not
stuff.
giving. I'm not going to go with. We're not going to let that pass over. If
So
you guys didn't do what you did in the '90s, the thing doesn't get done. I mean,
so
people. I've called Oracle Park the house that Bonds built, but it's kind of the house that Sabian and Colletti and Bonds built, because you guys. Yeah, he delivered, but you guys built around him, and as you can see around the sport, it's very difficult to build around a guy with a monster contract and with a big ego, and
Oh
you know
yeah.
it's not an easy roster construction. So I think you, Brian, and Barry, I think all three of you guys, when you see that ballpark, should puff out your chest and say, hey, you know what? Without our blood, sweat, and tears in the '90s, I'm not 100% sure that thing gets done.
Well, I would take myself out of that trio, and I would put ownership in there, and Barry and Brian. I appreciate the comment. But to answer that question, yeah, I mean, something like that would pique my interest in a minute. That's not something I have to think about. That's something I've thought about. For an organization that I have so much respect for, in a heartbeat would I do it. Again, whatever they wanted me to do. I don't need to be telling Farhan what to do or anything like that. That's his. That if he wants to ask me a question, yeah, sure, I'll answer it to the best of my ability and be a confidant and a consigliere to those guys. But whatever it would be, I would love to do it. But in the meantime, I don't beg anybody. I'm past begging, right?
You don't
And
need
so
you don't need that at this point.
no, I mean, I teach at Pepperdine, and I'm going to tell you, well, I'll tell you in a week or two. I mean, I got a phone call the other day that blew me away, and I'm not allowed to announce it yet. But I've been teaching there 6 years. I love doing it. I love helping people. I get great joy out of other people's success. May sound weird, may sound trite, but when I have a student, or I had a minor league player, or I had somebody I signed from Latin America that slept on dirt, and suddenly now I've given them a word of advice or some wisdom here or there, and suddenly now they're putting it together. I can't tell you how much joy I get out of that. So I do that. I love doing that. And I've been with San Jose for 5 seasons, and I love the sport, and I love the people. And Mike Greer been doing it for 1 year, but he's going to be a tremendous general manager. He remembers so many things. He's got a mind that it's almost a Maddox type of mind or a Barry type of mind of recall and thinking and understanding. And when people have curiosity, I think that's phenomenal. Whether you're 10 years old or 50 years old, whether you're running a hockey team, a baseball team, a podcast, people with curiosity, I think, are driven to continue to learn. And that's something that Mike's got. So that's what I do. And this will be my first summer with not a lot of to do except for some hockey from time to time. We've got the draft, we got free agency and things like that. But I enjoy life. I'm beyond the point of begging. I thank God every day for waking me up. And I just want to have a good day. But a good day, whatever that is, could be simple. Doesn't have to be as spectacular as last night was with my friends at Sudini's or with Randy in the afternoon. But I just look for a good day and a peaceful day. And if there's a chance for me to help somebody, let me know. I'm in.
All right, buddy, we're going to let you go, but I want to hit a couple of these on the starred chats, and
Yeah.
we're not going to answer all these, but there's a couple funny ones here. We got this one from Youth Baseball Highlights. Ned, I get this a lot. People get crazy. They talk a lot of smack. They cross a certain line. I got to block them. I got Youth Baseball Highlights saying, "Hey, Larry, this is senior softball games, buddy. Can you please unblock him? He's sorry for being an ass."
Well, he must really mean it. I guess you could unblock him and block them both if he goes back to doing his old ways.
There's nothing better than the retreat from, man, I got liquored up and I said a bunch of stupid shit I shouldn't have said. Yes, youth baseball highlights. I can't do it this second, but when the show's over, I will go into the system and unblock senior softball games. But senior softball games, watch it. Watch
Behave
it.
yourself.
Behave yourself. That's
Clean it
strike
up there.
one.
Clean
All right,
it
that's
up.
one. We got this one
What else you got there?
from Vicky, who's wonderful. She says, "Ned, did you ever have a player get hurt from washing their truck?" We'll
You know
just,
the answer to
yeah,
that.
we won't go
I
there.
can
Well,
take you to the street corner it happened on.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
All I know is he helped us get to the World Series about 6 months later.
And he
But
stood in well
yes,
at the double play pivot. All right.
yes.
We got this one from
Right
MF.
off of Hayden Road, by the way.
I'm the one who did the interview with him afterwards. Two interviews in a row on KMBR, and I told him, I said, hey, look, man, I'm not going to be a stooge for you. I go, you want to stick to your story, you stick to your story, but I'm going to ask you straight questions, and I'm going to follow up a couple times. And if you want to stick to your story, you do it. But I won't be Ralph. I won't be, I wasn't going to do that. But I told him, I said, hey, I got to ask you these questions because I'm not going to be a stooge. And he said, I get it. So me and Jeff got along right then.
I get it. Can I tell you once? You got a minute to?
Yeah.
Okay. So he comes in the next day and he's got his hands a mess, right? And he says he was washing his truck, right? And so, we think, oh yeah, okay. So we find out that one of our employees happened to be with him. So we go to the employee and we say, hey, we would normally not want anybody to tell us, but this is a big deal. We need to know the truth. Person says, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. So I had a buddy in the media who investigative type of person, right? And, he's interested in this. So he goes to the ballpark and starts, it was right by a bunch of Little League fields, right off of Hayden Road, a couple blocks up off from where Indian School Park is. And he actually popped the wheelie on his motorcycle and lost control of it. So my buddy starts to go over there and he's got all these parents that are telling him, you should have seen the other night. There was this guy, I think it might have been a baseball player, popping a wheelie at the stoplight, lost control, skidded, and the skirmish was on. The kids ran to the fence. They were looking, they go, I think that's Jeff Kent. And the employee helped him put the motorcycle in the back of a pickup truck because it was like on or about March 1st, because he was moving from an apartment into a different residence at the top of the month. And they were helping him move, right? And so they threw the thing in. So now we know what happened, right? And we go back to the employee and we say, so here's what we know. And we know who was there. Do you want to tell us the truth? Or do you want to hope that Jeff will hire you?
Right. You're riding with us? You're riding with Jeff.
Yeah, what are you going to do here? And so he told us. He said, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I felt I was in a bad spot. I said, okay. But I love Jeff. Jeff Kent, I tell you what, this man competed to the utmost. From the time he became a Giant through today, whether I'm scouting hockey or watching baseball, I measure almost everybody by how they compete compared to how he competed.
Great addition. I mean, he made, Sabe said I'm not an idiot when he traded Matt Williams.
Yes.
But when he got Jeff Kent, Kent made that trade because Vizcaíno, Tavares,
Oh, Jeff Kent was the focal point of the deal.
Jeff Kent
I have a bat from him over in the corner here. He says, dear Ned, we almost made it. Your friend always, Jeff Kent.
Last one. MF has a question, but he says, have you ever talked to? Wait a second, no, that's the one.
Farhan, I saw that.
Did you talk to Farhan?
Off and on when he was in LA. Haven't talked to him since he's been a Giant, but yeah, off and on. I'd be in there and we'd have a conversation.
And last one, Darren Ty says, who's Ned's pick for the Stanley Cup?
Ooh, tough not to take Boston. I think you'll probably see a Boston-Edmonton final. And if Edmonton's defense can hold up, Connor McDavid may have more than scoring titles on his resume.
All right, buddy. Great stuff. It was an hour and 8 minutes. I know you had to travel to get here on time. We went a little long. We got Damon Bruce waiting in the next room to hang out. I'm gonna let you jump, but hey, man, it's always a pleasure. And if we could do this every week to 10 days or so, I mean, that would be awesome. And the audience loves it. I love it. It seems like it takes me back to like the 90s and do all the radio stuff we did together. And it's just you're an awesome storyteller, a wealth of information. And I could talk post game with you all night. So we'll let you go. But
let's do it. Let's try and do it weekly or something like that. I'm in for it. Love to do it. Love the city. Love the people. Love the fans. Love my buddy Krueger. Nice.
Thanks, Ned. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
There you go. Ned Colletti. Awesome guy. All right. We are brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. Check them out. Corte Madera and in Emeryville. It looks a little bit like this in Marin.
So New York style sausage was started over 70 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh, goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never gonna deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, no one will beat it, hands down.
And do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it, guaranteed.
All right, thanks to the sponsors. Thanks to all of you. Join me right now on the Krug Show. Damon Bruce is going to be in the house. We're going to switch studios. So if you're hanging in the studio right now, jump over with us. We're going to talk a little bit about the Warriors-Kings game tonight, as well a little bit more about opening day and more. Coming up next on the Krug Show, starring the great D. Bruce. The Home and Home continues next, right here on the Krug Show.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to